This little girl found safe and sound after an Amber Alert. How police managed to finally track her down hours after she went missing. The new proposal that could allow some elementary schools here to hold in-person classes and why some are saying it leaves other students at a disadvantage. And county leaders discussing a plan to ramp up enforcement against businesses defying public health orders. ABC 10 News at 11 starts now.
ABC 10 News at 11 starts now.
Well, this toddler that we showed you is now back home safe after police say her father kidnapped her, prompting an Amber Alert. I'm Virginia Shaw. Police combed the county early this morning to track down the father and his 2-year-old daughter. ABC 10 News reporter Leah Pizzetti explains how that little girl was found.
It started in the early hours of this morning. A frantic mother called police saying her child was taken, and ultimately it led police here to this parking structure near UC San Diego. It all began Monday evening when police say 31-year-old Lafayette Harris took his 2-year-old daughter, Charlie Faye Harris. The child's mother called police in the middle of the night, then an Amber Alert was issued and the search began. Police say the father did break a domestic violence restraining order in place against him, and there was concern that he might leave the area.
I pulled a huge amount of resources up here. Obviously, when a 2-year-old child's in play, all bets are off. I pulled everybody from around the city to do a search.
San Diego police say the father was found Tuesday morning at work at a construction site near UCSD. He was taken into custody peacefully. Escondido police say they got a call from a woman connected to the father who said she was watching the news and realized she had the child they were looking for, so she called police.
This particular female who called us is connected with the dad in some sort of relationship.
Now the child is safe and the investigation into what happened will begin. Police say the father is looking at least kidnapping charges and charges related to breaking that restraining order in place. They say they'll give an update if any other charges are determined. Leah Pizzetti, ABC 10 News.
So glad she's okay. New guidelines from the state would let some elementary schools apply for a waiver to reopen for in-person learning. ABC 10 News anchor Mary McKenzie explains the rules and the concerns already being raised about allowing some schools to let kids back in class.
Some California elementary schools could reopen for in-person learning if they meet new guidelines to apply for a waiver. The guidance was released Monday night from the California Department of Public Health. It's only for grades K through 6 because distance learning is arguably harder for younger kids. Already there are concerns about safety and equity. Small, private, and parochial schools would be the most likely to meet the detailed guidelines due to greater flexibility to limit enrollment, for instance, and more resources to implement stricter safety protocols.
The gap is going to grow.
Susan Scala is the president of Chula Vista Educators, which represents teachers in the largest K through 6 school district in the state. On Monday, they held a motor march to call for a better plan for schools to reopen. She says with high rates of infection in much of the South Bay already, there's little chance that any schools in that area would qualify for waivers. The guidelines discourage them from being granted in areas where the infection rate is more than twice the threshold for being placed on the state's monitoring list. But even if they could, it's unlikely public schools would meet the other guidelines. To apply for waivers, schools have to submit plans at least 2 weeks in advance of when they want to reopen, with protocols including plans for testing and how they would handle outbreaks and closures. District approval will be required, and they'll have to talk with teachers' unions, but may not require them to sign off because staff and faculty at many private schools are non-union. It adds up to a bigger gap between the haves and the have-nots, says Scala.
Because there's inequity and unfairness in education, public education right now. And with the forces that are trying to dismantle public education, it's only going to make it worse.
Mary McKenzie, ABC 10 News.
Well, the county is trying to make sure San Diego businesses follow pandemic restrictions. Today, the Board of Supervisors is detailing new enforcement plans. Now, we have seen varying levels of enforcement from warnings to now formal charges against a Ramona gym owner.
It's about all businesses, small businesses like the salon across the street, the coffee shop down the road, the couple new restaurants that have opened that are struggling to survive. So it's not really about me anymore. It's about all small businesses. And I feel it's my duty to stand up
He is the owner of Ramona Fitness Center. Now, he now faces 5 misdemeanor charges for violating public health orders and faces up to 6 months in jail or a $1,000 fine for each charge. The district attorney's office says in part, quote, when the public health order is ignored, the public's health is at risk and we will file charges. But they also say they want to work with businesses to give them opportunities to comply voluntarily. Meanwhile, the City Council will talk about extending the measure that allows restaurants to expand outdoors to sidewalks and parking lots. On July 14th, the San Diego City Council approved it with a 45-day expiration date. An extension could stretch it to last an entire year. The city will also consider launching that same program for other businesses such as salons, barbershops, gyms, and fitness centers. Under state guidelines, those businesses can operate outside. Hospitalizations on the rise across the country as states work to get a handle on this coronavirus. The U.S. is approaching 5 million cases, and this morning, the White House is pushing back against criticism. ABC's Andrew Dimbert has the latest.
President Trump continuing to push an inaccurate view of the coronavirus pandemic. In an interview with Axios on HBO, the president claiming the virus is under control, despite rising death tolls in 35 states and the U.S. having around a quarter of the world's infections and fatalities.
How? 1,000 Americans are dying a day.
They are dying. That's true. And it is what it is. But that doesn't mean we aren't doing everything we can. It's under control as much as you can control it. This is a horrible plague that beset us.
The confusing communications from the White House come as the U.S. death toll surges past 155,000. The president even contradicting doctors on his own task force, like Dr. Anthony Fauci.
I don't agree with Fauci.
Trump criticizing Dr. Deborah Birx, calling her pathetic after she warned the pandemic was widespread and entering a new phase. He's since walked back those comments.
She's a person I have a lot of respect for.
Health experts have stressed social distancing and mask wearing as the best ways to truly control the spread. Not everyone is listening. Parties like this one in Beverly Hills, California, highlighting the problem. And as the next school year approaches, difficult decisions lie ahead. Districts turning to the Trump administration for a plan, but they've received little guidance. Although Trump says the virus is under control, under his own White House, it is now mandatory for employees to get random COVID-19 testing. Andrew Dimbert, ABC News, Washington.
Meanwhile, the stalemate continues on Capitol Hill over the next proposed stimulus bill. One of the key issues, how to handle unemployment going forward. The federal boost to unemployment just expired last Friday. Now, House Democrats want to extend that boost until at least for a while Senate Republicans are proposing covering 70% of lost wages. Now, both sides have reportedly reached some tentative agreements on extending the small business loan program and sending Americans another stimulus check. Democrats are set to meet with members of the president's cabinet today to further discuss that bill. We are also on top of this breaking news out of Lebanon, where authorities say a massive explosion killed or injured hundreds of people. This is live right now. You can see the smoke billowing over the capital there of Beirut. It was first reported as an explosion at a fireworks factory. Online video shows the major explosion complete with a mushroom cloud. The blast could be felt for miles. It knocked down balconies, collapsed ceilings, shattered windows. Video even shows cars being thrown and flipped across freeways. The cause of that blast not immediately clear. It did come at a time when Lebanon is going through its worst economic and financial crisis in decades. Well, a man accused of killing a woman in the 1980s is expected in court after all these years. James Kingery is expected to be arraigned later this morning in a case that had gone cold. 33 years ago, Julia Hernandez Santiago was found dead in Carlsbad. Police say they arrested Kingery on unrelated charges in March, and they got a DNA sample from him. And they say that sample matched evidence found at the Hernandez Santiago murder scene. Sandag announcing a multi-million-dollar grant aimed at beefing up transportation options for seniors and the disabled. The county is looking for ideas for that money to help establish things like volunteer driver programs, shuttle services, and services to transport people to doctor's appointments. They are putting more than $7 million toward the initiative, and they'll be accepting grant applications through October. You can find more information on the Sandag website.